Slightly Above Average Gamers, Way Above Average Podcast. Welcome to the Slightly Above Average Gaming Podcast with your hosts, J007TV and Sub1KD.
Welcome, everybody, to episode 29 of the Slightly Above Average Gaming Podcast. I am one of the co-hosts, J007TV, and I'm joined, as always, by the homie, Sub1KD. What's up, man? How you doing?
Doing good. How are you, man? How was your week?
I'm good. It's good. I was out in Denver this week for work. Just glad to be home. I'm on a 4-day weekend, so looking to get some games in and
Nice.
stuff like that. How was your week in gaming?
Week in gaming was, it was a lot of fun. Been doing a decent amount of mobile. Almost have more wins in mobile than I have in the premium game so far. And you know what? It looks like crap. The controls are wonky. There's a lot of stuff that needs to be fixed, but it's fun. If you can run it, it is a better experience than running the big map. We've talked about that before, but came this close to my very first solos win in any mode across this game. So consider that a good start to it. I'm gonna keep grinding on that. But yeah, played a little bit of multi, some zombies. Just generally having trying to take it a little low key going into the end of the season here. How about you? I know you traveled, so you didn't get a lot of gaming time in.
No, I didn't. But what I did do actually is I took the Switch with me. I ran a little bit of Mario Kart, which was fun, just to kill time. But I did also download an emulator for the N64, so I'll be able to get some GoldenEye going there.
Nice. That'll be good. Yeah, GoldenEye's fun, especially I think the new emulated version has online multiplayer. At least on Xbox, they added that, so you can play with the homies from across the country, unlike having to all share the couch, and then you have the original cheating accusations of you're looking at my screen.
Yeah, pretty much.
Which anybody who says they didn't is lying or they were terrible at the game.
Oh yeah.
So I won't hear otherwise.
No, I mean you could side peek.
If you weren't peeking, you weren't trying.
Did you play The World Is Not Enough?
No.
Which was basically the follow-up to GoldenEye.
Right, but that was not on N64. That was on PlayStation 2, I think.
Might have been on Super Nintendo, too. Was the Super Nintendo after the N64 or the N64
first.
after?
It was N64 and then GameCube.
So it was also
it on GameCube.
Well, it was, if I remember correctly, on the Nintendo 64 also, because I bought one. And okay. I played it. I mean, that was a pretty cool game. It was not like GoldenEye. It was not like GoldenEye at all, but it was still pretty fun.
Yeah. GoldenEye, for the youngins out there, is the greatest console first-person shooter ever made. And the skill gap holds up now. And if you used Odd Job, you're a piece of crap.
Yeah, no doubt. And, dude, there was no ADS either. Remember, everything was hipfire.
Mm-hmm. Yep, no ADS.
Except for the sniper.
No aim assist. None of that.
Oh, no aim assist. I know some people that would really like that.
but then again, you all have to use controllers, so there's no mouse and key.
Yeah, that's true. But speaking of games that are supposed to be fun, I played the beta for X Defiant. I'm sure you played it for a day or two as well. But
yes,
I'm seeing some trouble, and a rough path for this game at the moment right now. I don't know if you saw Tom Henderson's article or not, but things are not looking good for this game. It's just been delay after delay after delay.
Look, here's the problem, and I understand from the point of view of the management. Mark Rubin, I believe, is head of heading the project right now. His takes are his transparency has gone down. Like he was being heralded as like this is how you develop a game and transparency. And he was very very candid about the troubles they were running into. But what we have coming out now really kind of it doesn't refute it. It doesn't say there is no world in which I think he has not been accurate in the things that he says, i.e., what he says is true, but he's also leaving a lot out. And some of the information that Tom Henderson has brought forward, and the fact that he's gotten a copyright strike on at least one thing related to it, tells me that he is correct in his reporting. Because we all know that if you report a leak and that report gets copyright stricken, then you are correct and that leak is accurate. That's how this works.
So the biggest thing that I'm seeing that seems to be the issue is, and it's not a ground level developer problem per se, is that management and the executives are constantly pushing to and wanting to compare that game X Defiant to Call of Duty and do things the way Call of Duty did. And I've said this several times. I think that the corporatization of the video game industry to where it is now is terrible. It's just terrible. Like I feel like, I don't know, if it were me, yes, I would want profits and I would want to make sure that certain efficiencies are met. But at the same time, I want my artists to do their art. I want to let them be free to do their art. And then I approve the final product before it goes out. I don't want to be like Jerry Jones and have my damn hands in every single thing at every given moment. Like, let people do their jobs. And speaking of that, from what I understand, based on Tom Henderson's article, there are people that are making decisions that are not qualified to make those kind of decisions, that were there basically just because they're friends with whomever. I don't know. That, to me, it just spells for disaster, if you ask me.
So it can be challenging. Looking at what Tom Henderson so to summarize what Tom Henderson did, he has 2 articles and a couple of Twitter posts detailing this. But essentially, in his first article, he says that there are forces at bay that are basically holding this game somewhat hostage because they want it to compete head-to-head with Call of Duty, which, let's be clear, it's a 6v6 multiplayer, and there's only one 6v6 multiplayer game in the market right now, and that's Call of Duty. So if you make that genre, you are competing with Call of Duty, and you better be able to compete with it, or you ain't going to make it. Okay? I want to be clear about that. It is the 800-pound gorilla in the room. You need to be able to bat toe-to-toe with it. If you just have, it's just an indie game and it's just going to be for fun, guess what? It's going to be for fun and you ain't going to get paid and you ain't going to have content and you're going to go under in 6 months. All right? You will be gone in 6 months because no matter how flashy it is, you won't be able to keep up. And the crux of the article is that the X Defiant has missed internal and external launch windows repeatedly over what sounds like a 2-year period now, maybe 3-year period. And it's...
Let me ask...
Yeah, go
Sorry.
for it. No, go for it.
I wanted to ask you, because of your software background, right, and your developer background, is that something that's a common thing? Like when you're developing a product or trying to ship a product, is that... does there become a point where it's like you've missed so many deadlines, screw it kind of thing? Or like from your end of it, in your experience, is this normal? Sorry to cut you off, but I'm really thinking about that.
Two different there are 2 different things that happen. Number one, you have a clearly defined product, right? And then you have a vaguely defined product. Those are the 2 common products that you get. When you try and ship something that is going into an established market, and you want to battle, like you want to take on the incumbent, in this case, you need to have a very clear and very time-based product so that you can actually compete with it. So I've talked about this before. You know, one of the products that I headed up, you know, we wanted it to be perfect, and in the pursuit of that, we missed multiple internal deadlines to the point that we just had to have a deadline. Like, we just said we were going to ship on this day no matter what. And we shipped it, and it was great, and everybody loved the product. But the problem is we took so long to get to market that a competitor came out, struck a deal with the big boy at Instagram, and off went their, off went our product's opportunity. And we didn't put any effort into designing the monetization of it, right? It was a passion project. Well, it cost the company over $1 million to ship it. And when you're a $30 million company, $1 million cash out the door with zero return.
That's a lot of money.
With zero. I mean, we made, I think at the end of the day, it made less than 50 grand in profit because we shoehorned microtransactions into it literally a week before we shipped. Okay. That's how last second monetization was, because we missed the opportunity to partner and license to other companies because we took so long. And the product lasted 6 months and it was shelved. Literally on the cover, we were on the cover of the Wall Street Journal, under the fold, but on the cover of the print edition of the Wall Street Journal. That's how good our stuff was. And at the end of the day, it lasted 6 months, lost over $1 million, and was canceled. So
why the delays? What was happening for that? What made it?
Same thing that's happening with from what it sounds like with Defiant. It's feature creep. It's perfection, right? So if you look at where it was at the beta, it wasn't perfect, right? But, you know, and they had issues with netcode, which they still have. They're still fighting this netcode issue, which is the same thing that Call of Duty has been fighting for years, right? And instead of just shipping it and then working to improve it over time, they're trying to ship the perfect product. And the reality is, they gave Activision enough time to pivot the entire franchise to and generate something that people want, that people are generally happy with, for the most part, in terms of like gameplay. So the idea that that you're going to have a perfect product in Defiant is kind of ludicrous, right? And so this is kind of where you have to shit or get off the pot at some point, right? When it comes to software, and Defiant is not doing it. And part of it is what Tom Henderson talks about here is how many different hands are in the pot right now, kind of defining characteristics of the game, talking about what they want the game to be, right? And the reality is it has to be a game that will compete with Call of Duty. If it doesn't compete with Call of Duty, if it can't hold its own as a 4v4 or 5v5, I forget how many are on a team. I think it's 6v6. Somebody will correct me in the comments, I'm sure. But
it's 6v6.
Yeah. So, but then you have to have features that Call of Duty has made standard, right? Like kill cams and ranked modes and leaderboards and all this stuff, right? I mean, leaderboards and stats are kind of ebb and flow apparently these days in new games, but
so weird.
It's the weirdest thing. It launched in Warzone Mobile day and date, so plus on that. But the issues that they're having, right? They're trying to create a product that will ship and be day one competitive with Call of Duty. And the reality is they're doing that by adding features. And every time you add a feature to something like this, it breaks everything else. And in Tom's second blog post, this is all on Insider Gaming, they talk about this, right? They talk about how, they have all these features they keep trying to add in, and and they added them in years ago, and it destabilized their netcode, which wasn't designed for that, for whatever reason. And all of these things are interfering with the launch date, right? So every time they set an internal launch date, they can't get it where they're happy with it, and it does, and new problems come up, and they have to go back and start over and try and solve the problems. The reality is, people complain about Call of Duty shipping where it's not working right. Other games ship, right? Like we hear these complaints. We have the same complaints. So why would you ship a broken game? Well, this is the alternate. You never ship it, right? You never actually get to ship the game because you either A, need to add more stuff. And here's the thing. Your competitors are always innovating, right? They're always adding more things. If you don't do the same, you can't compete with them because you're already behind, right? It will feel like a stale game on day one because you don't have these things that are popular. So, in the window in which the initial beta launched, right? Call of Duty was in a very bad state. They could have put the game out the week after the beta, and it would be in a really good spot right now, right? They'd have a fan base. They'd
It'd be
have grabbed a
generating
lot of that,
income.
be generating income. It would have grabbed so much of the, it would have grabbed a huge disassociative section of the player base from Call of Duty, and they would probably be more invested in X Defiant than they would be interested in Call of Duty, especially since Call of Duty was looking at, was dealing with all of these, movement issues and all the Warzone 2 problems that they were having, and Call of, Modern Warfare 2 era problems. X Defiant was the answer to. Well, X Defiant didn't come out. Call of Duty took note of it. Anybody who says they didn't, they took note of how excited people were about X Defiant, and now we have Modern Warfare 3, which resolves a vast majority of the mechanical problems that people didn't like about the game. Okay? I'm not saying it doesn't have Call of Duty doesn't have problems right now, but they solved a lot of the problems that were holding people back. And now, when X Defiant has to find a way to be different than Call of Duty in a positive way, because otherwise it's just going to be a Ubisoft Call of Duty clone, right? And that's not going to do well.
Well, let's talk about Ubisoft for a minute, and just some of the shooters that they've had. The two biggest ones being Ghost Recon and Rainbow Six, and then you factor in Splinter Cell, but that's not really the same.
They haven't touched that IP
if you think about it.
They haven't touched
No,
that in
they
years.
haven't. And it's crazy to me that they haven't, but we can cover that another day. But you know what those two things had in common? They were attached to the Tom Clancy brand.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if people know this, but Tom Clancy was an author, my favorite author, actually. I've read several of his books. I even read the book Rainbow Six, which is one of my top 2 favorite books of all time. I've read it several times. And when it came to Tom Clancy, there was a certain amount of realism in the game, kind of similar to what we've talked about with Call of Duty, where, it's like a photo realism. But then there was also some mechanical realism things too, right?
Mm-hmm.
That they would do, all the way down to like putting breaching charges on doors and, just cool stuff like that, that were in their games. And they got away from what was, in my mind, really good about, like, take Rainbow Six, for instance. Vegas 1 and Vegas 2 were fun as hell to play.
Rainbow Six Vegas is one of my all-time favorite shooters.
Yeah. Yeah, it was. And you could do just like straight up like team deathmatch if you wanted. You could get into a whole lobby with your friends and do that. We used to get 16 people in lobbies, on Ghost Recon. But they got away from that with Rainbow Six Siege. While I played that game for over 2 years, it just got to a point to where I was kind of tired of it. And it wasn't what we wanted for Rainbow Six. They turned it into a hero shooter, trying to follow trends. And they won't let that game die right now. That game is still going. I can't believe people are still playing it. it's not a thing for me and my group, because again, Clancy Games is where I got my start in online shooters. So with Rainbow Six being the way that it is, and then Ghost Recon, they went in a completely different direction with that, made it this big open world game that shipped without even PvP, which essentially is why I stopped even playing Wildlands when it first came out. After a while, I got tired of doing the missions, which funny story, I'm back doing those same missions right now because
You're back to
I'm
it.
frustrated with Call of Duty periodically. But they shipped that game without PvP, and then they come out with their PvP, and then it's still even different. It's like this 4v4. I don't even want to call it a hero shooter, but there's roles like intel and those kind of things. And I actually made friends with probably 3 or 4 of my friends were actual Ghost Recon pros. So they have a history of um, changing things up and doing different things. I don't understand. I guess that's the point I was trying to get to with Ubisoft or with X Defiant. They don't have to do the same shit that Call of Duty is doing. They can do some similarities, but also do some different things. And the one thing that I'm not seeing anywhere talked about at all, and we've talked about this several times, is fun. We're
Yeah.
talking about internal problems, shipping deadlines, copying Call of Duty and everything else. Where's the fun aspect of it? Why is that not a priority? Do people
Because
not
fun doesn't pay
understand
the
that
bills.
but it does if it's fun and word spreads and people buy your game and they keep playing it because it's fun, not because they're manipulated into playing it.
So there's 2 kinds of games out there, right? And I think this is something that people need to think about, need to consider more. The old style games, right? Which back in us old folks remember the old style games where the game comes out, you buy it, and then you never deal with the company again, right? You buy it, you play it, and when you're done, you sell it back at GameStop at the end of the year. Okay?
Yeah, once you beat the campaign.
Yeah, then the game is you'll never touch it again. Um, or it has some multiplayer experience, but it never changed. Like in the old days, back in the old days when us were youngin' boys, you never actually got new guns or new maps. You played the same game, right, for a year until a new game came out, and then you switched over and you played that. But you played the same game, right? It's the same maps, it's the same guns, and occasionally a game would try and extend its monetization by giving you purchasable DLCs. And that's usually when the game would start to die, because then the lobbies would be split and your rich friends would have it and you wouldn't have it because, you're a cheapskate, or, you're poor in college and you can't afford that when you want to buy the next game coming out. And you just don't have it, or people just lose interest in it, so they don't buy it, right? So then the lobbies are all fragmented, and some people have different stuff, and they can't all play together, and the game would just kind of fall apart. And then there's live service games, right, where the game is supported over an entire yearly cycle, and then some, right? So Call of Duty and games that have battle passes are a live service game, and what that means is they are constantly updating, they're constantly adjusting and changing the game so that at any given point in time, the game is different than it used to be. Okay, so it's constantly a new game in a lot of ways, or a new iteration of the game. And so the advantages of live service games is that you can keep the same title going for a long period of time. Like Fortnite, for example, is a perfect example of a live service game. It just always goes on. Oh my God, cats are fighting. They're the games today, right? The game Fortnite today versus Fortnite at launch, if you were to side by side those games, they are very, very different games, even though it's still Fortnite, right? The map is different, the guns are different, the movement mechanics are different. All of these things have been changed over time. But in the old days, right, you got the game on disc and that was it, right? So you could make a game that would be fun and would sell well because it was fun and people would play it for 5, 6, 7 months, maybe a year, maybe a little more than that. And then they'd move on to another game because all the money is front loaded, right? You pay $60. It was $60 back then. It was actually $50 a long time ago, but you pay 50, $60.
No, $39.99, dude.
Well, yeah, if you were on GameCube, but if you, but when you bought a game, you would have a, you would take your fistful of dollars, plunk it down on the counter, you get your game, and the game company has now made their money, right? They are done making money on you. All right. And so their emphasis is to get as many people as possible to purchase the game on day one. And the problem is sometimes they did a great marketing campaign and you get the game out and it sucked, right? And now I'm out $60 and I'm never going to, I'm only going to get 45 back at GameStop on day two and probably less than that because the game sucks and now everybody knows it. Okay. And you also had to wait for the magazine to come out that would tell us whether the game sucked or not.
Remember Operation Flashpoint?
Vaguely.
Prime example. They did a great marketing campaign. The game looked really cool. We got it. It was terrible.
Yeah.
It wasn't at all. So it was like one of those deals where like you controlled your squad, if I remember correctly, like you controlled your squad and then you just kind of commanded them. You didn't actually get to do the running and shooting a lot yourself, which was kind of lame. And then Tom Clancy did the same thing with Endgame where it was one of those strategy games. I don't know if you remember that or not, but like it was a strategy game where you used the ghosts, rainbow, and that kind of stuff. And so that they did do that. But Ghost Recon had some free DLC. Like they were throwing out free DLC for a while. And then you're right. Yeah. As soon as companies started monetizing that DLC, that was kind of when the player base started to split. So I remember that distinctly because I'd have the DLC and I'd be playing with people who just didn't have it, or
and then you couldn't do certain things, or it's in Call of Duty back in the day, right? Like you would just get kicked out of the lobby when a new map came up on rotation because somebody in that lobby had the DLC, right? And eventually, that's what would just lead. That would be one of the breaking points of people wanting to play the game. You'd have your friend group, but some of your friends would have the new game, the DLC, some wouldn't. There'd be a mismatch of DLC, and it would just break the party apart because you'd have to start backing out of games, and it was a mess. It wasn't great. So the old style of gaming, right? Like you could make a game that was fun because you only had to sell it on day one, right? Games would make 87-90% of their profit from, I made those statistics up, but they'd make most of their the vast majority of their profit, right? By Christmas, right? They'd release in November, and by January 1st, like that's it. They know whether it's successful or not, and then it's a long tail of coming out with Game of the Year to try and like entice some people to jump in and play for a minute. Like you'd see it for $20 in the bin, right? By the end of summer. So they're just trying to break even on the copy they minted out. So in those days, you could make a game, and you could spend more effort having fun as long as you could sell the game on day one. Okay. In a live service game, the game has to be survivable for the entire life cycle of the game, minimum a year. Okay. You have to build mechanics that will generate profit because especially on games that are offered free to play, right? If it's free to play,
like Defiant,
and and they put all the effort into fun, but they don't put any effort into monetization. Guess where Defiant's going to be in 6 months? Gone. Okay, just like the product I worked on. I mean, we were launch day. We tracked it. We were covered over 170 news outlets around the world. Featured us. Live morning broadcasts featured our app. We were on print magazines and print newspapers. 6 months canceled because it wasn't profitable. Doesn't matter how much fun it is. You can't waste 1/30th of your company's net revenue on something that just doesn't generate any business, right? That's not how you run a business. That's how you run a business out of business. And that's something that people need to understand when you look at video games and the way that video games come out. So when a game comes out on time, even if it doesn't work very well, it's out, right? They can fix it. Look at Cyberpunk 2077. That game was rated one of the biggest pieces of shit ever released, right? People were associating it up there with ET from Atari days, like the game that tanked the entire video game industry for like 10 years. Okay? And it was that bad at launch, and now it's considered a great game. People love that game because they got it out, they recognized the problems, they admitted there were tons of problems, and then they fixed it. And they put the effort into making the game, putting the game where it should be. Okay? Defiant is missing that whole segment.
Let me ask you this, though, or say this. I think that that's different for a game like Cyberpunk 2077 that's not an annual release than it is for a game like Call of Duty, which is always an annual release. So there's a lot of extra pressure involved. You know what I mean? And it comes to a certain point where they're just like, you know what, fuck it, I'm going to go work on the next year's title. You know, like they did last year. Remember, we were talking about that. They stopped really doing anything the last season and a half of consequence and started working on, you know, they were directing their resources towards this title. At least that's the way it seemed. But like for a game that's not a yearly title, I can see where you're better able to do that. But I mean, do you remember the launch for World War II, for Call of Duty World War II?
I wasn't playing Call of Duty then.
And see, so they tried to do something different, and it was cool. In theory, it was awesome, and it was a Sledgehammer game. They tried to set it up where like there was this whole social hub, right? Kind of like Destiny. Did you play Destiny? Yep. Where like you go to the I don't know, what is it, the Citadel or whatever the hell?
Yeah, something like that.
Call of Duty had that. It was really dope too. That. Like when it worked, but it was a complete shit show the first night, first day and a half. You couldn't even. You couldn't party up. You couldn't launch into games. I got friends that took off the day after or the day of and stayed up late to try to play that and never were able to get into any games. And then there were still things, there were features in that game. Like you were supposed to be able to go in there and do like custom camos and some other customization things at a certain part in that HQ that was never operational. They never fixed it. And they just went dark on comms about it too. They never brought it up again.
Yeah.
But like they had a window though to get that game running and get it running right, or they were probably going to be screwed for the next title too. Because if you go months at a time like Cyberpunk did with Call of Duty, where a game is completely broken, that doesn't bode well for the next title.
No, but you know, let's put it this
way:
there's
more pressure.
Let's put it this way: if World War II came out, like November, typical November launch.
Yeah, it was always October, late October, early November.
Somewhere in that window. If they launched in February, if everything worked and they launched in February, do you think people would have bought it? Do you think it would have been the thing? It would have been Christmas. It would have.
Yeah, it
would
that
be
deadline.
Right up. It would. It would. Now you're encroaching on the next game. So, like, is it worth? Would people look at it as, hey, this is worth investing in prestiging like 9 times, because I'm going to be on to the next game in a few months.
Yeah,
like the next. So, deadlines are important, and in an industry like this where there are always alternative games in the wings, there's always stuff waiting to be played. There's always more games than you have time to play them and to invest in them, unless you just live in your mom's basement and don't have any relationships with anybody else besides your Xbox or your PC. Like, you have to get the game out. You have to get it in the hands of people at some point. And so I understand that I hate it when a game doesn't work. Like Caldera was, like Vanguard was trash when it came out, especially on console. And shoot, there was a period when Black Ops Cold War era where I couldn't actually complete. I spent a full half season unable to complete a match. Like, I couldn't get all the way through a game of Warzone without the game crashing. It became a meme at some point. And
yeah, they've had some rough patches with the connectivity, because Al Mazrah was like that at first too. Remember, like when we were in Al Mazrah when it first launched, dude. You know how many times we were in Final Circle, 2 teams left, or I would disconnect. My team would stay in and get the win. I got cheated out of probably 10, 15 wins in the first 2.5 months of that game.
Well,
Because remember
they
how it
wiped
just kept disconnecting
they
you?
wiped
And
all those wins away, so that was a waste of your time, anyways. But at the same time,
well, that's true. None of the stats ever fucking
I was
were
on
right,
console,
but
so
yeah.
it worked great for me. I didn't have a problem. PC Master Race issues.
Hey, dude, you're about to join us. I don't know why you're talking shit. That's not a way to join a club, sir.
I got another day left to talk shit, and then I have to suffer with you all.
But I want to say one thing though, because you mentioned a really good point. About it being a business. Both of us have been in the business world. We're both 40 and over, so we've both been in the real world, the business world, for a long time. You and I are both fully aware how business works and how to be profitable in a business. We understand that side of it. For me, I disconnect that though sometimes when I start looking at it from the consumer standpoint, not the business standpoint. And I know that doesn't always seem logical. So that's why the fun aspect of it to me, I just always looked at it like if the game's fun, people will spend money. But in a way that you described, that also makes sense though for a live service game. It's got to be a little bit of fun, but definitely functional too, in order for it to work. So I get that.
And and think about it like this, right? You're in sales. I've been in sales a long time. We've both done that. We've both done this. You ever ship a product that isn't going to be 100%, but you can make it work for the customer?
I don't know about make it work. Have to make it right.
Yeah, but you ever do a deal that when the deal gets signed, there's going to be a lot of legwork to actually make the customer happy. It's not going to be a smooth sailing journey, and there's going to be issues
and it's
that you
always
have to overcome.
The smallest orders. Yeah, it's the smallest orders that are always like that too.
But is it better to just not have the order? Would you rather not have the order than have to work hard for it?
No, from a business standpoint, you want that income.
Yeah, you want the income, you want the order signed, because you can always put money into making it right and come out ahead versus not. So here's an example. When I was selling real estate, I worked with a client, and they were a pain in the neck, right? They wanted cuts of my commission. They wanted to negotiate everything. They wanted to hem and haw and pick at every little thing, and every little detail was a problem, right? Every detail was an issue. And they lost the deal didn't go through. And kind of in the post-mortem, I just laid out to them, look, here's all the things that went wrong. Here's why it didn't work out. And I worked with them for 4 months before they found the right property, they found the right house, and we negotiated and worked. And I worked hard to get them sold on it, and we finally got it. Everybody got into contract. We got it good, and even though it cost me a lot of time, money, and effort to get them out the door, like to get them in. Once they were in, they were so happy that they made up for it by referring like 3 other customers or 3 other clients. And it became one of those things where you put up with the problems that you create by taking them on in the first place, because at the end of the day, it pays off at the end. If you're in the games industry, if you're trying to sell a game, right, and the game is not going to be perfect, but you can get it out the door and you can fix it, you can make it work where you make the customers happy and you make the game ultimately successful at the end of the day. Versus not shipping it at all, which is not shipping it at all because it's not right. It's not perfect yet, right? And then if you ship it and everybody says you missed your window, it's too late, nobody's interested, then you don't get anything at all. And I think that's where Defiant is right now. They have missed their window of opportunity.
I think so too. Timing is everything. And that's where I think too, a lot of these upstart games like this, where they screw up is they got to stop trying to compete with Call of Duty. Don't launch around the same time. The Call of Duty cycle. It's the same thing every year, right? Launch
Yeah.
in that window when dissatisfaction with Call of Duty is the highest, which is when X Defiant should have. I think that if X Defiant or Ubi listened to what you just said and shipped, that'd be awesome, man. They could just ship the product, ship the product and make it work. Like that's the way they should do. That's the way they should have done it, is what I'm trying to say. Like, because I totally agree with what you're saying. I don't understand this need for perfection when, like you said, just get the product out and you can fix it. As long as it's not too broken, you can fix it.
Yeah.
And make the changes and updates. It's a free game anyway. So you know what I mean? Like, get it out, fix it, get the store going.
And you know what? And people will ride Call of Duty, and rightfully so. 3,000 devs, and they ship a game that just doesn't even run on NVIDIA drivers or whatever the issue was with Modern Warfare 2. And you look at Vanguard at launch, right? All the problems that Vanguard had on console, right? They fixed it, right? By 2 months after launch, the game was running smoothly. Okay, so I think for the amount of heat that Call of Duty gets for this practice, at the end of the day, their games get out, their games get fixed, they ultimately run smoothly, and by the end of the life cycle, the game is doing well. And moving to a unified platform, which is what we have right now, is actually, I think, solved it. If you think about it, Modern Warfare 3, how many problems, how many critical, major game-breaking issues existed when Modern Warfare 3 launched?
I don't can't think of any, and I'll go ahead and say this. I think that Modern Warfare 3 has multiplayer in the best place that it's been in probably 6 or 7 years, in my opinion.
Yep.
Like the multiplayer's smooth as hell. The issues are with Warzone. It's not with
there's a lot of
I'm talking about like the
issues. Yeah. But the game ran,
issues.
right? Like it actually ran, and it ran well.
It did.
For everybody. Like there's lots of little things, tons of little things. There still are tons of little things that they can fix and they should make better. But it wasn't like entire sections of the audience just couldn't play the game for weeks on end. Okay, like we had with Caldera, like we had with Modern Warfare 2, like we had during the Blackout era. Even Modern Warfare 2019 had issues at launch. Okay, so they are getting better. They have this unified platform. I think has taken a lot of the back end development off the table, off the shoulders of every game, right? So now there's they can focus on what makes the game good versus trying to actually rebuild the architecture for every game. So I think from that point of view, there's a W there, and it's going to help stability. And when they have problems, they're just on it. I mean, look, W Raven this year, W Sledgehammer for their communication and the speediness with which they fix things. What was it? Season 1 launch or Season 2 launch? I forget which one. Just absolute disaster, right? They had fixes out at like 3 a.m, if you remember.
Yep.
Like my time at least. So
yeah.
Their
they
time
hadn't
way
done
earlier.
that before.
No, they recognized the mistake. They fixed it immediately, and they worked hard on it. So I think that situations like responsiveness overcomes bad launch, right? If you launch with bugs and you fix them quickly, bigger W than waiting and launching a perfect game when nobody wants it.
Well, and that is something we've talked about this on this podcast since Modern Warfare 3 came out and this iteration of Warzone came out. Sledgehammer has totally won me back over with just the way they have, especially considering, even like Chad of Duty mentioned, like just the hand that they've been dealt twice in a row. For them to come out and launch a product that's in as good a shape as this game is, Modern Warfare 3, I'm not talking about Warzone, and then for Warzone, for Raven to be as responsive as they have been and been on top of most of the game-breaking shit, they still need to do a bit better job with the anti-cheat, I think, Well, I know they need to do a better job at that, and their matchmaking fucking blows. But aside from that, everything's great. Like I agree as far as that goes, minus some other things that I've discussed. But
Yeah.
back on the X Defiant thing, I've just kind of lost my interest in it. I'd hoped it would be good. And
Maybe it
as
will
Call
be.
of Duty fans, we should hope other games are good. We should not be laughing and giggling, when these games fail, because what that does is that shows Activision that they have no competition and they don't have to do crap if they don't want to.
Competition drives quality
And innovation.
and innovation. If you want good stuff I mean, look, I'm not saying it was 100% X Defiant's doing, but X Defiant announced they had their big beta. Everybody was jamming for it. And what does Call of Duty do in response within a few months? They start improving movement in the game, and then they start hyping direct changes to Modern Warfare 3, specifically things that X Defiant fans, I don't remember if X Defiant itself loaded these things, but things that X Defiant fans pointed out that they were going to get and Call of Duty wasn't going to have, like movement and sliding and things like that. And here's one of the things, and here's what I'm going to point to. X Defiant brought back slide canceling, right? And do you remember how to slide cancel in X Defiant?
No, it's been a long time.
You hit the slide button and you tap it again to stand up and get right back to running, right?
Yeah, it was quick. It wasn't like tap tap tap. Like there wasn't three. It was quicker than Call of Duty.
Combo. It wasn't a glitchy button combo. It was literally built into the game. Tap to slide, tap to stand up, like tap to cancel slide and stand up. Hey, how do you slide cancel in Modern Warfare 3?
For me, it's shift,
tap to slide,
spacebar.
tap to stand up.
Shift spacebar, and I'm done.
But in you don't need to. You could shift. It's the same thing. It's one button.
Yeah.
They put in there as one button, just like their competitor that missed the boat.
Yeah.
X Defiant has lost their advantage. They gave away the pie, and they said, "We're going to do it better. We're going to do all the fun things," and then they didn't show up to the party.
The one thing that I wish that Call of Duty would do that X Defiant said that they were not going to do is have SBMM in their public matches.
Oh,
they said it.
We're going to get to that.
We should probably move on. It sucks. I hope X Defiant is able to come out. When it does, I'm going to play it, but I'm not excited about it like I was. I was genuinely excited about it. But it is what it is. And so anyway, moving on, unless you have more on that one.
Well, speaking of 6v6 multiplayer, Jay, tell us the good news in the Call of Duty world, since we have a new roadmap to a new season that is not vaporware.
Yep.
W, L, we going thumbs up, we going optimistic, we kind of going meh.
I'm going thumbs up. I feel like I just said, I feel like Modern Warfare 3 has multiplayer in the best place it's been in a long time. And you got to look at what it's overcome too. It had to overcome all the bullcrap online of, oh, it's just download content. It's DLC, for Modern Warfare 2
Best
and this and that.
DLC
And they had
ever.
to go ahead. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And yeah, a lot of the maps were remastered. And the funniest thing about that, before I get into this season, that always cracked me up is people talking about, oh, they're just remastered maps. They're just remaking them. Yeah, bro. For those of us that played this game 12 years ago, yeah, it's a remastered map, but I guarantee you most of these you probably don't really remember, so it's more or less going to be new. But for a large portion of the player base, that shit's new anyway. So who cares? Like you're just wanting to bitch about something just to bitch is what I felt like they were doing back in the day. But anyway, with where we are now, so the biggest thing that I'm seeing that I really look forward to is there are now 6 more maps coming out that they're rolling out. And some of them are going to be iterations or parts of existing existing infrastructure or existing maps, whether they be Warzone or multiplayer or whatever. But like your first map is you got a map called 6 Star. It's supposedly a medium-sized map. I'm looking at the layout of it. It traditional Call of Duty looks like a 3-lane map, and then you've got
It's like a
you've got your
resort, right?
middle part of the
Or
map.
like a
Yeah, it looks like a
hotel or
resort.
something.
Yeah, so that's awesome. And then you've got another one called Emergency, which is brand new. It is a 6v6. This is a small map. They're coming out with a lot of small maps lately. I don't know if you've noticed that or not, because you've got that meat, and then they brought Das House back. You have Shipmas. They're really focusing on the small maps, which is cool. It's fine.
Yeah,
I don't have a problem with it because
I like the
it
small
keeps
maps
you in the
better.
fight. You're out here. Well, yeah, you're out there dropping like 115 kills in a match. Of course you are. So anyway, you've got the emergency map. You've got Grow House, full disclosure, guys, these maps on the surface don't seem familiar to me, but like I said last episode, I only played Advanced Warfare for about a month. So if any of these maps were in Advanced Warfare after I stopped playing, they're not going to be familiar to me. So if I say it's a new map or whatever, that's because it's new to me. So anyway, then you have Grow House, which is another small-sized map. The layout on it looks pretty good. You have Tanked, which is part of it's the aquarium portion of the zoo for Vondel. So that's pretty cool. It looks like it's got an outside and an inside. And then Checkpoint, which this is repurposed. I'm almost certain this is repurposed from Rebirth. If you look at it, see if you think that.
Yeah, it does look like Rebirth, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, it is. Get a taste. If you look at the description, get a taste of Rebirth Island and multiplayer later in season 3. So,
You're asking me to read.
it's repurposed, but it's still a new. I know, right? It's still a new map, so that's cool.
Sure,
At least it's new to multiplayer.
It's new to multiplayer.
There's a Grime map, which is brand new. This is a small to medium-sized map. It's coming out mid-season, so we'll get that with season 2 or season 3 reloaded. And then the other cool thing is there's 4 game modes that are coming. One of which I think is going to eventually make its way into the CDL again, because it was a pretty popular mode. But Capture the Flag.
Mm-hmm.
That's a pretty fun mode, so I'll probably start playing that a bit when that comes out. That's really cool. Then there is One in the Chamber. I think that's a redo.
That's been around for a long time. You get one bullet.
Done that
you
one
get one
before.
bullet in a gun and a knife, and every time you kill somebody, you get another bullet. It's a fun game.
Yeah,
fun party mode.
Yeah, and then the one that seems to have gotten you excited, I want you to go ahead and cover this, is the Minefield.
Minefield. Essentially, it's 6v6, but every time you die or you kill someone, where the body is, it drops a bouncing Betty mine on the ground, and those are and they are general purpose mines, from what I understand. So you can kill somebody, walk over their body, and you get blown up by the mine, right? So it's not like team based mines. I think maybe they hid that in words otherwise, but I can see that on a small map where it's just like you can't move without getting blown up, and when it blows up, it'll like. I'm gonna go back to GoldenEye when this was fun. We used to play in the caves. If you remember the cave map, where we would play with the loadout that had the proximity mines, and you would just run around and just stick proximity mines everywhere. And you literally couldn't move at some point. You would get to the point where somebody would have to move. And when they do, they're going to hit a mine, and then it's going to blow up. And sometimes they would chain reaction. There'd be so many mines, you'd chain reaction and kill somebody else with it. Made for some fun times. So hopefully, it's definitely giving me those vibes of just, it's a goofy mode just to have fun. If you take it seriously, you're going to hate it and get out, because we don't want you there. We want people to just go in and have fun. Crack some beers with the buddies, have a good time. That's what party modes are for. I approve. I think it'll be a good one. I'm going to try and play it some. And then they have the escort one, which looks meh.
So that's similar to, they had an escort type of mode for X Defiant, and I also know that Overwatch had like an escort type mode too. I didn't play Overwatch, but I watched it because the guy I modded for, he was playing it at the time, so I saw that. So that's kind of cool. I'm assuming
they had one very similar to this in Vanguard, where you would have a zone, like a kind of like a hard point zone, and the hard point zone would just move around the map. It would just make a big loop around the map. And so when you were holding you had to hold the zone, but unlike hard point where you're holding a fixed point, the point's always moving, right? So like you can't, I'd play it in DOS House a lot, where it'd be like, it's not like you can hold a room and the whole team can just hold angles on the doors, because the zone would just move to the next room, right? So you'd have to follow it,
right?
And it would constantly create new opportunities to engage fun. It was a fun mode. It would take forever though. Like if you were leveling guns, it was great because you would get like 20 levels in a match, but it would take you 35 minutes. Sometimes felt like 35 minutes. Probably wasn't that long.
So the rest of the blog post covers the ranked part of it, which we're not going to go into that. If you're interested in that, I urge you to just go to the blog post. And I mean, essentially the ranked mode is still going to be the same way the ranked mode has been. You're going to get in-season rewards for how you finish those kind of things, whether that be weapon skins or operator skins, whatever. But coming with what's that?
Zombies get a little love.
Well, there's some. Yeah, they do. So there's a new story mission. There's a new Dark Ether Rift. Apparently there's a new Warlord, and then there's some new classified schematics.
It'll be fun.
Again, I don't play zombies like that, but
I just do it to level.
You're on mobile.
Oh no, I play zombies on the. I'm grinding the. So I'm grinding Borealis. So I'm trying to get a gun done a day. So I'll have that at some point. It's fun.
So the other thing I was going to cover is, and then I'm going to turn the roadmap over to you is so there's three different sections. So we're getting 3 new weapons as far as like shooty weapons, if you will. In the battle pass, weapon. You have, and then you get a stabby weapon. So the first one is the FJX Horus, which looks almost like a MP7 type variant or MP9. So it's like a little SMG. Then you've got the MORS, MORS, which is a new sniper rifle. As far as a stabby or melee weapon is the Gladiator. So that's basically the knife that has like the handle that fits in your hand, and
the icon so you got on that. The screen and then you've got
right. Yeah, like a little arrow or whatever. But then you've got the BAL-27, which looks to be a new AR. So that's cool.
Yeah.
You got some new operators coming.
These are Infinite Warfare weapons.
Infinite or advanced?
Maybe advanced. I don't know. One of those jetpack games.
I think they're Advanced Warfare.
Okay. Well, sure. From that era. Sledgehammer loves that era. I don't know why. Anyway, so they're themed for that.
Yep. Then you've got 4 new operators, one of which is in the black cell, but you've got Banshee, Hush, and then Snoop Dogg. This is now going to be the 6th time that he's featured in a Call of Duty. Do you know first time he was featured in? Yes. Do you know the first time he was featured in Call of Duty?
Apparently not, because I thought it was going to be a cold era.
No, it was actually Call of Duty Ghosts. He was in-game voiceover. Start of the match, score streaks coming in, those kind of things. So they had him and Arlie Ermy. So that was pretty dope.
I might have to go.
Yeah, he's going to have his own operator.
I have this game. Do I have this game right here? Let's see. I don't have it here, but I have this game somewhere. I will go find it. I will play it because I just want to hear that. I
think you had to have bought it when it was out. I don't know if you'd be able to get that now, but yeah. That was out. You probably Google it. Yeah. It was a store item that you got.
Okay.
But I'm going to tell you. So looking at the Snoop operator now, This is probably the first one that I'm actually excited about, like that I want. He just looks dope. And then there's Stasis, which looks like some kind of robot something or other out of the Black Cell.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not entirely sure if I'm doing the Black Cell or not. Of course, I say that, but I'm probably going to end up doing it anyway, even as frustrated as I am with Call of Duty. But there is a new perk called the Compression Carrier, which looks like it's going to be more like quick fix for health purposes.
Okay.
Again, if you want to go over the specifics of it, you can go through the blog and do that. But for time's sake, I'm just kind of going over these a little bit. There is the modular assault rig, which looks to also have a scavenger part of it.
Okay.
And, you've got new reinforced boots, a high grain antenna, and then a gunslinger vest. I'm not entirely sure what that does, but
Okay. Well, fun. Multiplayer is getting some good love. Looking forward to grinding some of these guns out and leveling them up. The the other operator skin that is coming in season as a bundle, as a series of bundles, is the Godzilla is back. Godzilla and Kong.
why?
Why not? Best LTM ever.
Yeah, nothing says military shooter like fucking two titans fighting over a goddamn volcano.
Hey, at least
Get
it was
off
in
my
New York
lawn.
City.
Yeah, I know, right?
That was a fun mode. But the with this comes the return of my favorite finishing move. Slightly higher than the little midget elf that kicks you in the nuts, which is what I'm running now. But it's the Godzilla yeet move where you just grab them and just yeet somebody clear off the map.
That's pretty
So
dope, actually.
that's coming back. I 100% will be buying that because it's awesome. I one of my favorite executions is I yeet a guy and his body hits a chopper and gets caught in the blades and spun off and then spun off into oblivion. So like not only did he get thrown and then he gets yeeted again from the chopper. It would have been better if he caused the chopper to crash, like if you yeeted it in the chopper and the chopper died. That would have been epic. But instead he just gets tangled in the blades and goes to the moon. So I'm looking forward to that. I've literally been saving COD points specifically for that operator, for that finishing move, because I'm like that. But yeah, so that's going to be fun. And then I heard there's something going on in Warzone. They're getting something. Do you remember what it is? I can't remember off the top of my head.
I don't know, man. I don't know. Something to do with
just,
an island or some crap.
If I could just like remember something to do with an island and coming back again and again.
It's almost like the rebirth of a mode or something.
Yeah, like a rebirth island.
Yeah. Sounds like you're pretty excited about it.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Rebirth Island's coming back. So they announced this in Call of Duty Next, and which funny enough, they didn't actually say it was coming back. They didn't say Verdansk was coming back, but they said this anyway. They all the way back in Call of Duty Next. I'm kind of surprised that this thing is coming back sooner than Big Map Ranked mode, but we'll talk about that in a moment. But Call of Duty Warzone brings back Rebirth Island, Resurgence mode. Hopefully, they clean up the maps and ditch Ashika, and honestly, they'll probably ditch Vondel too, I would imagine. Instead of trying to rotate 4 maps through that 3 of them nobody wants to play. Or they'll just have Rebirth and then a map rotation of the other 3. But coming in, they're moving ranked play in Season 3 to Rebirth Island. So we'll have Rebirth Island ranked play, which will be interesting. They're adding the Champions Quest to Rebirth Island, which will be its own which will be its own thing. And then they are adding A lot of little features, but mostly destructible environments in season. So we'd heard about this a while back from various sources. We weren't quite sure on the details until they announced it, but it sounds like at the start of certain matches, sometimes, different POIs will get destroyed to start the game, including the 2 towers on the map and a big hole in the roof of prison. I think that's kind of fun. Zero complaints about it on the surface, especially since it's not an every map thing. But otherwise, the map looks pretty unchanged. I'll tell you one thing they did do from the looks of it, and something they talked about, is they've brightened up the interiors of a lot of the buildings. So no more dingy hallways that the what's her name
Rose.
Skin can hide in, which I think is awesome. And yeah, so it's going to be kind of a return to the old ways. And I think there's a lot of excitement for it in Warzone right now. Kind of, the map looks like it's unchanged from where we left it at the end of Caldera. So it's actually, this will be the 4th iteration of the Rebirth Island as we know it. I think 6th iteration of this map overall. I believe this map was featured as a zombies mode, and then it was in Blackout, and then it came back in Resurgence, in the Resurgence mode, and had 3 iterations. This is the 4th Resurgence iteration, so we'll have. It'll be an interesting way to get the look and feel of it. They've kept security a stronghold, so it's kind of, but they've got rid of the 1940s like motif that they had going on. If you remember, they kind of had when we last saw Rebirth Island, it had that whole feel of trying to tie it into the World War II setting. Do you remember that?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So they're bringing that in.
I didn't play it as much when it was that, though. To be honest, I played Alcatraz. That I had hundreds of games on Alcatraz, but not Rebirth Island as much.
Yeah, I didn't play that Blackout, so this was more. This is all I know, man. It's all I know. But you know, it kind of touches on an interesting debate because, you know, there's something that we've gone through all the big parts of the roadmap and we haven't discussed what they're doing on BR. Have we?
No. You want to know why?
Because they haven't done shit for BR.
No, they're not. They're not doing anything for the BR, and I'm not entirely sure. I don't know why. Are we going towards Resurgence Zone, and that's what it's going to be, or are we going to have a BR at all? So, I mean, we know with Verdansk is coming. So it's just crazy to me that you would spend the first 3 seasons alienating that part of the player base. And I've never understood why you can't support both.
I don't know, but I'm going to tell you one thing that's really interesting is the big map right now is feeling like Resurgence. There's 8 different mechanics to get an extra life in the game right now versus, you know, the old days where it was just one. You said one mechanic. We have 8 mechanics. I think it's 8. Someone will correct me if I'm wrong, but it feels like Resurgence. You know, you're running 5-6 lives a game. Not to mention how many times you get bought back, right? I mean, and the veil between Resurgence and BR is so heavy, and they've restructured BR to accommodate that. So last year they reduced the number of players on Al Mazrah, and they increased the circle speed, and they increased the number. You know, that's when they started ramping up the frequency and the number of times you can come back. So they added they've added all these different ways to come back. Extra Gulag tokens, extra redeploy packs, flares, all these things. And so the problem with this is that it feels like you're playing Rebirth. And so or Resurgence. So what's the difference between the two? Well, they rolled up 2 new game modes for Rebirth Island that are limiting, is blurring now the line between Resurgence mode, like Resurgence Warzone, and multiplayer. So Lockdown, if you played, if you're not familiar, if you never played the mode, it's a super casual mode in which you are you spawn in with your weapons and you have to hold one of multiple hard points to get to earn points. The more team members you have, the more points you get. Whoever has the most points when the timer runs out wins the game. So in that mode, you drop in unlimited drop-ins. You have your loadout. There's minimal looting, and the goal is to hold these hard points. Well, they're bringing that back to Rebirth Island, which I think it'll be fun. But then they're adding another mode called Rebirth Resurgence Loaded, and this is a mid-season mode where they ditch the ground loot entirely, and it's just deathmatch with Resurgence characteristics, like with Warzone characteristics, armor plates and all of that, on the big map, on Rebirth Island. Like you drop in with your loadout, you have all of your gear, right? The only thing you're looting for is more ammo. It's the only point in opening chests, more ammo and streaks. And you can switch, it's like it's multiplayer. And they're driving Warzone into the multiplayer sphere. Like they're taking Resurgence and they're just shoving it straight into multiplayer. And they're and unless they have planned some epic comeback of BR, I don't know that there's a future for BR left in Call of Duty right now.
Doesn't seem like it. It doesn't seem like they really care. And full disclosure, I'm at a point to where if Battlefield does roll out a BR and it's good, and it's not all this respawn nonsense, I'm out. I like Call of Duty. I want it to be good. I'd love to go back to the way it was for Warzone 1 in so many ways, but specifically the way of you didn't have 18 different ways to come back. It was you won your gulag, or I think you could get bought back. I'm not sure when that started, but
day one.
So the buyback and the gulag were the only two, but the buyback was also like $6,000. It wasn't $3,000. So, for example, the other night I had a match where I came back with like $13,000 after I died. I had that much cash on me. And I came back with like $13,000. I was able to buy my entire team back, and I think we were even able to pool our money and get loadout. Like, that's crazy to me. It's really taken out, like we've talked about this before offline. It's and online on Twitter. It's really taken out the consequences for doing certain things and for making a bad push or making a bad play. It's like, well, I'm going to make a bad push, but who cares? My team's got $85,000. They can buy me back 17 times.
And they have a portable buy station.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just to me I don't know why they don't differentiate.
Just so you know, I looked it up. The original buy station in 2020 when Warzone dropped, buybacks were $4,500.
$4,500. All right.
$4,500. It's
that's not bad.
It's not bad. It's attainable, but it's not. It doesn't feel like you get it out of one chest.
But you got to factor into the cash economy on the floor. Now you can walk into a building with $0 and come out with $10,000. A lot of in some cases, or a lot of the time. It also has to do with the amount of cash on the ground too, which I think
you could also buy it. You could also buy a shield turret for $2,000.
Yeah. It's just kind of crazy. But it makes me wonder why. Why this shift?
So we talked a little bit about this offline, about there being a and they mention this repeatedly, right? Their data shows, their data shows, their data shows. And I think we've started this shift in Caldera, right? In Caldera, we started seeing Gulag tokens, if I remember right, like extra Gulag chances.
The Flare came in Caldera too. I'm pretty sure it
Did
did.
it?
The pizza box.
I thought, no, I thought that was Warzone 2.
I'm pretty sure the Flare was in Caldera. I'll look it up.
Yeah, we'll check on that. We'll check back on that. But they started coming up with these ideas of bringing people back more frequently, and they always talked about their data shows. And so I'm going to this segment is going to be a compare and contrast to Warzone Mobile and the Warzone BR experience. I'm not going to consider Rebirth, right? Leave Rebirth alone. Just the BR to BR. And I say this because Warzone Mobile right now, they took all the mechanics of summer of 2020 Warzone, right? And dropped that into the game. Like, that's what the game is. So buybacks are $4,000. There's no flares. There's no tokens. There's no kind of goofy, like, all of that is gone. You have one life. You have one gulag, and then you spectate until you get bought back by your teammates. And I will say this: I have been queuing in with randoms for the last week and change, and they quit the second they die. Some of them don't even play the gulag; they die once they're out. They quit, and I can tell you that my guess is they sensed a general dissatisfaction, and the data backed it up, that people don't like to spectate playing the game. And you factor that in with the performance of Caldera and the general shift off of that map to Rebirth Island, because Caldera, well, you factor those in together, and it is a very simple leap of logic to say, well, people don't want to wait to keep playing, which is fair. I think it's a fair statement. A lot of people don't want to wait to keep playing. They died. They don't want to wait. They don't want to be like the poor dude that we carried to a win once, and he died on the opening drop and lost his gulag. And I tell you, we could not get to a buy station to save our lives. It was trios with a rando fill. Every time we tried to get to a buy station, it was camped and just busy as can be. And so this poor sucker sat and watched for 20 plus minutes as we played the game. No, we won the game.
For those that can't wait, go play multiplayer.
If we won the game,
you can fucking spawn 1,000 times. Go play multiplayer.
Yeah.
But you guys won your game?
We won the game, so it was worth it for him. He got the W.
Well, you got to win. Yeah.
Probably got to, play
he
some
was
Tetris.
Hard carried.
Read a couple chapters in a book.
It's hard break out the Switch.
Yep. But that, I think the experience that most people have is they don't want to die and then spend 10, 15 minutes watching a team camp out in an attic somewhere in Eastern Europe and do absolutely nothing for 10 minutes and then get wiped by a team that rolls up on them. I can understand that experience is negative, but it's also a BR. It's kind of how it's supposed to be. It's what makes BR exciting and thrilling, is that every time you do something, what you do carries risk. And you have to weigh, is pushing this building worth the reward compared to the risk? If you think there's a team there, is pushing that team worth the risk of having to spectate the rest of the game? And so a lot of people, when you put it that way, they don't, they play the game differently. And I can see how the data would show that people were unwilling to wait, and therefore we have to fix BR. Combined with the fact that people were fleeing Caldera because the map is trash to play Rebirth because the map there was not trash. Rebirth map was very fun. And so when you look at the way the player base shifted, I can see how the data would suggest that people want to play more on the big map. And you add a little thing here and a little thing there to kind of extend that opportunity. And that people seem to well respond to that. But then you switch to Modern Warfare 2, and you've changed all the mechanics. It's a lot of watching. It's a lot of waiting. The game is much slower. And there was a general dissatisfaction again with the game. And again, you saw Rebirth reintroduced, or Resurgence reintroduced, and you would see a shift of players from, into that mode. And I can see how the data would say, well, as soon as that mode's available, people are abandoning the big map. Well, the big map is too slow, right? The reality is, it wasn't that the data did not show, I think, the sentiment of most of the people that want to play BR. Oh, look, there are people that are Rebirth mains, Resurgence mains, right? They don't like the big map. They don't like that whole... Fine. We're not talking to you people. Please, play the mode that you enjoy. Resurgence is fun. Can be a great mode. Can be a lot of entertainment value. It is what it is. But on a BR map, even though you see data that shows a lot of people moving from the BR to Resurgence, it doesn't mean that the issue is that people are watching the mode, right? That people are stuck spectating, and that's what is making them not want to play. And I think that's the read that Activision higher-ups got from the data. When you look at the data, you can say, oh, obviously, here's an effect, right? People move from the big map, from BR to Resurgence. The cause must be, and people quit out of matches frequently when they die. The cause of people leaving the big map to the small map, to the Resurgence mode, must be that people do not like spectating and do not like dying in the BR. The reality is, in both cases, you have massive fundamental problems with the BR that are not related to people dying and spectating. Caldera was a shit map. It was terrible. And no matter how much they tried to fix it, you still can't fix the design of the map. Right? The big mountain in the middle was a problem. It was a bad decision. World War II was not great. I understand there's a lot of stuff that went into why they went with World War II. I'm not going to argue about whether they should have done it or not. It's fine. It is what it is. But those two things drove general dissatisfaction on top of all the problems. So I think if you were to put your thumb on the pulse of the actual players and actually talk to the actual players, the problem wasn't that they had to spectate when they died. The problem was that they had to play on a map they didn't want to play on. And then you fast forward to Warzone 2, and you have all the things that people hated about it. You have the mechanical things that people didn't like. They didn't like the movement. They didn't like the way the looting system works. They didn't like a lot of the systems that were in place. That coincidentally, they got rid of a lot of that when they introduced Resurgence back to the mode. So if you look at the data and you say, all of a sudden people are going to go play Rebirth because they've been dissatisfied with the big map experience, and you attach the idea that it's because they have to spectate the game to that, I don't think it's drawing the conclusion. I think the data is not telling you the real problem with both of these scenarios. But I think it's created this easy to sell idea that the data says players don't want to spectate, and when we give them an option where they don't have to sit and spectate, they take that option over playing the BR. When the reality is the BR has fundamental problems that people don't want to deal with, so they go to another mode. They're 0 for 2 on this. And so you start out now with no BR, with Resurgence Light map, right? Smaller circle, faster gas, constant moving, like all the things that make the BR what it is, have made Warzone BR what it is. You're getting rid of in place of these pseudo resurgence elements that are coming in. And that's making the mode unfun. And you pile on top of that punishing SPMN and a cheating epidemic we haven't seen since season 4 of Verdansk. And you've created a mode that's just generally unfun. People don't want to play Urzikstan right now because the mode, there's no BR left in it. The soul of the BR is dead. It is gone. It's been carved out and thrown aside in favor of trying to court the resurgence players to come back instead of making the mode what it should be. Which is why I keep bringing up Warzone Mobile, because Warzone Mobile has gone back to the way it was. It is literally a copy-paste of like Season 2 Verdansk from 2020 on a small screen with little dingy graphics. And as bad as it looks, and as bad as the mechanics play, it is fun to play. And it is fun because it doesn't have all this resurgence crap thrown into it. It has all the things that made Verdansk fun to play, and none of the resurgence stuff that wrecks the mode. And here's the problem that we're going to get into, is if you bring all of this stuff to the new Verdansk in the Treyarch game, that is going to destroy Warzone. If you have 27 different ways to come back and the circles close at lightning speed, right, and there's only 100 players on the map, Verdansk is going to be terrible. Verdansk played so well because it was a big open space. You had time to move. You had time to explore. The POIs made sense.
You could regain.
And you had space to regain, okay? You weren't as congested. And you know what? When you get to the back half of the game, the number of teams that are complete is very small, right? You don't see that anymore. I get to like the 4th or 5th circle, and it's like 50 players up, and they're all full teams, right? Like they're almost all full teams, or they're missing one person. You get to the same point in Verdansk, and there's 10 people up, and there's 7 teams in quads. Okay? And that makes the final circles fun because it's a total scattergram of everybody just trying to get to a position to fight off. Everyone's got to look over their shoulder. You're not holding hands with your teammate trying to get through the final circle because your teammate's watching you because they're all dead, right? Because you're just the one guy who got through it all. And so is everybody else. Okay? That's the sort of stuff that made Verdansk fun, not having, 6 teams of 4 jammed into a final circle with no cover trying to like duke it out. Like it destroys what made Verdansk fun. And they gotta fix this. The future of Warzone depends on what they do from here on out in fixing the BR. Otherwise, they might as well just cancel it and make Rebirth Island part of multiplayer. Just make it a multiplayer map and call it a day.
I think to me, the biggest reason why it's so frustrating that it's Resurgence-esque, if you really think about it, it's you kind of hit on it a little bit. I don't want to come back 17 times in a match if I'm already getting hoed by SBMM. It makes it not fun. Because you just got bought back into a death. And for me, this is how it always happens for me. One of my squad mates is sprinting to the buy, taking rounds, gets the buy off, dies. I get popped up into the air. I have nowhere else to drop. There's a building over there. I'll go drop over there. Maybe I'll find something. And I'm either beamed out of the sky on the way down, which doesn't really happen that often, or I get there and there's either nothing in there because it's already been looted, or there's a team just waiting in there for me, waiting for somebody to come through. And then you get clapped. Yeah. And it just
or
adds
you get down there, and by the time it renders the
Yeah.
players, right?
You
You have nowhere else to go. You are too low.
Yeah.
And then you've got full teams on every rooftop all looking at you going like, you want to come on over here? No, I don't want to go over there. I want to go somewhere where there isn't anybody.
It seems like the only time the audio cue works for somebody dropping in is when I'm the motherfucker dropping in. I mean, think about it, dude. But yeah, it's frustrating. It is very, very frustrating to me. And I liked Blackout because it was one and done. There wasn't even the gulag. Now, I can live with the gulag. I'm about 50-50 in the gulag again because they took out them stupid ass lasers. So, hallelujah. Let's get drunk. But yeah, like adding in all this other extra stuff. And I've been on this since Caldera, actually. Once they started introducing all this stuff, I've been told I'm a complainer, get good, I'm a crybaby, blah, blah, blah. And it's been very frustrating to me. And it does get my blood pressure up.
Well, I mean, you should do all those things. You should do all those things.
Right. But go fuck yourself. What's refreshing to me though is that I'm starting to see the big names saying the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
The polls check. Those guys were on there talking about saying the exact same things that I've been saying for a long time. Lucci said the exact same thing in a tweet that I've been saying for a long time. So I'm hoping that those guys and the pull that they have, or they may or may not have. I mean, I don't know. They didn't listen to him for Warzone 2, so they may not listen to him for this either. Of course, it was different studio heading everything up. Different so maybe, maybe Ted Timmons will listen. But I've specifically asked him if we were going to get a differentiation between BR and Resurgence. I don't understand why you can't just support both.
You know, and here's the thing.
Here's what I'll say. One or the other.
It's entirely possible that Resurgence is the biggest mode, just naturally, because it pulls from people who like the Warzone experience but don't like spectating. Those people exist, okay? They probably didn't love BR to begin with. They probably didn't love BR to begin with, but it was all that anybody played during the pandemic, right? So they got hooked on that. But as soon as Resurgence drops, we were talking about a tweet one of our mutuals posted where they said this. You know, as soon as, we didn't have to wait, we could come right back. That's what we wanted to play. But it's also going to pull from people that are multiplayer fans who don't like BRs at all, but do like kind of that tension experience that Resurgence can give. So I don't doubt that Resurgence is actually the biggest player base. Okay? I don't doubt that. That doesn't mean that the way to make the BR good is to make the BR Resurgence. And that's what I think we have to solve. Like, we have to make clear that it's not that BR for the sake of, like, BR is BR, Resurgence is Resurgence, and they should be very different.
Well, like I said this week too, think about this. So what good is data that you're using when the very game is designed to manipulate you into being addicted, into playing the game and player and retention? And then also when you're screwing with the playlist and taking squad sizes out, you're literally forcing people who maybe want to play trios on BR but can't because it's not there over into Resurgence because they can play trios because they have one too many for duos and nobody wants to go in and play. Well, normal people don't want to go in and play trio quads. It's not fun. We do it for a little bit just out of spite because we weren't wanting to go play Resurgence, but even then it gets old doing that. So you are the cause and the effect of why we are where we are. If you really, really think about it. Like, don't tell me that you collected all this data. Well, yeah, you manipulated it into the data looking one way or the other. That's why.
Mm-hmm. Well,
I mean, that's the way I feel about it. And I may be wrong there. It's just very, very frustrating to me when all I hear is, well, they must have the data. It's like, I told J-Rock the other day, I'm like, dude, you did a video specifically pointing out how this game manipulates you. It manipulates people into wanting to play the game. So if anybody ought to understand this, it should be you to know that you can't sit here and you got to take that data at face value only.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, look, you have to be able to evaluate data. That's one of it's one of the ways to do business, right? Even today, or like today, yeah, it's everything feels like it's data driven. But even back in the day, like you still collected data, right? You know, you collected sales data, and when something didn't work right, you got rid of it and replaced it with something people liked. Okay, it's how you've sold things for, I don't know, all of modern history. So data is important. If you don't have data, you're just guessing. And we've all played games where clearly they didn't pay attention to anything and they just did whatever they wanted and they turned out a piece of crap. So, I think the data is important. I think the problem is that, and this goes all the way back to what X Defiant has to deal with, right? People that make decisions based on data. They make the decisions based on the data that's presented to them. So if somebody sits there and says, like, takes a look at the data for um for BR, right, and says, look, the data clearly shows that people don't want to wait to play the game, and so we should solve that in BR. Then the decision is being made on data, and that data exists and it's real, and no one, I think, would argue that it's not real data, but it also ignores the other aspects, the other elements and data points that show that the issue isn't the spectating, it's issues with the map, or it's issues with all this other stuff. And so it gets lost, right? The data is incomplete. It's not that the decisions aren't being data driven, it's that it's not the full data. It's not telling the full story. And you know what? It could be people that are presenting this to the higher ups are presenting it because they don't like BR. Maybe they like Resurgence better, and they want to prove that, hey, Resurgence should be our focus, right? Maybe that's the conversation, and that these are a stopgap to killing BR, right? Because if they can't justify the expense of the BR, why do it? Like, hypothetical. These are hypotheticals.
You know how you
I don't
sure.
have data on this. I'm just guessing.
You know how you could fix it? I say you throw out in all of the launch clients, every single one of them, BattleNet, Steam, console, whatever. Boom, throw out a survey, see if you can get people to actually participate in a survey. Find out what the likes and dislikes are of each of these modes. Find out what modes they want to play to begin with. You could do a survey and collect that data, and that data would be it would be more useful, because here's the thing. Player count and player retention does not equal satisfaction when you factor in the manipulation of the game. It doesn't.
It does.
Just because,
you're right.
I'm angry as fuck and I still play this game. There's more
But
people like me out there, I promise you.
here's the problem with surveys. Same thing with reviews, right? Go on the Google Play Store and look up Warzone Mobile reviews. It's like a 1.6. But you look at why it's getting why is the data show? I mean, if you were to look at that, the game would be, you would say the game is garbage. You look at Apple's Play Store though, and it's like a 4.6 or something, 4.7. People love it on iPhone, on iOS, because that's what it's
it doesn't work
for.
on Android.
Exactly, it does, but that does. But if you look at it's two data points, right? And if somebody takes the 1.7 star rating on Google Play and takes it to a higher up and says, look, people don't want Verdansk. Look at how bad it's reviewed. Look at how bad it's rated. RIP Verdansk, right? Like, that's not a hard leap of logic to make.
You gotta
when you
throw
sit there,
in common sense,
it's
though.
real data. It's real data. It's there. But if you're not delving into why is it rated so poorly, and you're not delving into other sources of data and combining them all together and taking an objective look at it, then you're missing the point. The point is it's not optimized for Google. That people with, their 7-year-old free Android that's like actually 12 years old and is a piece of crap, why doesn't that run the game? Oh, I'm going to give it a 1 star because it doesn't run the game, because it's an old piece of crap because I'm cheap. Okay? The problem isn't the game. The problem is you just don't have the hardware to run it. And you know what? They
Well,
probably should have cut off a huge swath of Google and say, look, you need to run the best, the current best of the best, or it ain't going to work, right? You're going to have such a bad experience that you're going to have a 1.7 star experience with the game. So just upgrade your plan, okay? And a lot of people would be like, yeah, no, and that's fine. But it would have a much higher rating, I think. But the
yeah,
reality is
maybe.
that if you take the rating, if you take that survey, right, that's being done, and you make decisions based off of it, and you don't take the wider context into account, you're going to make bad choices for the game as a whole. You're going to
Well,
sacrifice the things that make the game great to appease the people that don't like it.
so I have kind of a real world example of that for like my job, right? You know, I cover the West, okay? I'm not going to get into the industry or anything like that because obviously I do kind of want a little bit of privacy. But my point is so the West is a market that's just completely different compared to the rest of our markets for our company and our industry elsewhere, because we have no manufacturing west of the Mississippi, right? And we talked about shipping product, shipping a game, which is it means something a little different than what I'm talking about. But the point is getting your product from A to Z, right?
Mm-hmm.
Landed cost matters. Well, when we have all of our competitors that have manufacturing in Kansas, California, Colorado area, and then you look at my numbers and you say, well, those numbers aren't that great compared to what everybody else is, and that's all you look at it, you're looking at it just from a surface level rather than actually drilling down into the why it is the way it is. That's what you're going to get. And that's exactly what they did with this data all the way from Caldera through now on Resurgence and regular Warzone BR. That's exactly what
Feels
they
that
did.
way.
They didn't drill down. They just looked at surface level numbers and ran with it.
Mm-hmm. Or here's the thing, right? And this is something that I dealt with, is you take the data, and the person who compiles the data has a certain opinion, and they compile the data in a way that supports their opinion. Because here's the
Oh
thing,
yeah,
right?
it's
And you see this, you see it in the Defiant story, right? If you read the second article, right, they talk about how there's like a group of people kind of in charge of Defiant, right? And they call it the Boys Club. That's what they called it in the article. And they said basically
yep.
like the decisions that come out that don't support the Boys Club's opinions, right? They're not. It's not encouraged, and the people that come with the data that supports their opinions are what gets picked up, right? So if you were playing to the decision makers' opinions and you say, look, you like Resurgence, well, look, hey, the data says they like Resurgence elements. Let's add that to the BR. That's an easy sell, okay? So I think we're in this weird position where the the data probably the data that they use probably tells the story they want it to tell at some point, someone somewhere, right? And there's not a pulse on the player base, and the problem is, even if you try to put your finger on the pulse and try to understand it, there's so much else going on that cutting through the noise is a problem. And this is why, to me, Warzone Mobile is such a incredible like A/B testing scenario. Just forget all the riffraff from simply the gameplay, looking at the gameplay loop of how Warzone used to be versus how it is now. Specifically in the BR, it's night and day. And the amount of fun that can be had in the old loop, the way it used to be, versus the way it is now, it's not worth playing now, because you might as well just play Resurgence, where you don't have to rely on the RNG of who gets a flare. You just come back on your timer. Okay? I hope that they are doing that they are looking at the data and how people are playing the mobile game and comparing that to how they're playing the BR now, and they're going to draw the right conclusions and acknowledge that these two games, these two modes, need to be differentiated. You need to have a BR and you need to have Resurgence and you need to have a rift between them where you have two completely different games and you're not trying to blend them together and create this like weird, almost multiplayer-esque Warzone experience.
Yeah, and if you're not going to support the regular BR, then just take it out. If you're not going to support it, take it out. It's crazy to me, but they did this with zombies too. Remember the start of season 2? They didn't. There was literally nothing for zombies in the first half of season 2, which is crazy to me. And they're doing that with this BR, and I don't know if maybe they're waiting because maybe they are going to drop ranked over the summer, which is kind of crazy to me to drop big map ranked past season 4. Like if you don't have it by season 4, just don't even do it. Like there's really no point to it, in my opinion. But I can tell you right now, some of the Warzone pros, Brax specifically, I know I talk about him a lot. He's my favorite Warzone player, so it just is what it is. Deal with it. He said the same thing. He's like, Resurgence is just a glorified TDM match. And it was funny because some dude, this guy, he's like, he starts talking trash to him and is like, well, you tell me when you got a team stacking and you can 1v4 him. And I'm like, bro, you still have time to delete this tweet. Like, I don't think he realized who he was talking to, because Brax will 1v4 all the time. I see him do it. He even does it in ranked. Like, that's what was crazy to me. It's like, this dude's trying to talk shit to him. And that's what's so stupid about Call of Duty Twitter, too. Have you ever noticed that if you don't like something, you're a bot or a trash can? Or if you have a real, like, honest critique of something, you're a bot or a trash can? Like, we deserve what we get.
Welcome to the internet, circa,
Yeah, I know. It's ridiculous. But anyway, I'm glad we talked about this whole thing with the data and being on the same page is for that. It's just been very, very frustrating. I know you've been frustrated with Big Map for a while, and you've been playing the mobile, and I am going to play a little Resurgence. I don't hate Resurgence. I just don't want my BR to be like Resurgence. That's all.
Yeah, I want BR to be BR. I want to have the feeling that I have every time I log in on mobile and I get to play the way it used to be. I want to have that on my, soon to be PC. In fact, as of tomorrow, allegedly when it comes in, because that's been its own saga, I'm a week late on it. You know what? I'm fine actually taking consoles back to 80 FOV.
What? Of course you are.
We should revert it, right? Revert it back to 80 FOV so that I can experience the joy of being able to camera somebody by just walking past them at a brisk pace.
Jesus. All right. So for the next couple weeks, for this to die down, you are now responsible for checking the notifications for the podcast Twitter page, because I want no fucking part of that.
That being said, speaking of walking by and getting kills, I know you were traveling a lot, so your opportunities were limited, but you were talking about an almost kill of the week.
Yeah. I dropped in on one of my favorite spots. I call it the car dealership. It's right over there by the train station on that side of the map, and you have that military camp up the hill a little ways. I drop on the big roof. I hear a shoot behind me. I'm take about 3 or 4 steps, grab a gun, slide, and turn around, and I down the guy. But unfortunately, my teammate, I guess, was being accosted on another roof, and that dude's teammate was shooting me with his pistol before I could figure out exactly what was going on. I think I might have also taken a couple rounds from the guy that I downed. So it would have been a really sweet kill, but I didn't have any help because my guy was busy. He was, like I said, being accosted. And it was nice to kind of snap. And, as far as like the gulag last night, I think I won probably 60% of those.
Nice.
My favorites are tossing the C4, getting a crack on blue, and immediately pushing and taking them out. I did that like 2 or 3 times yesterday.
Sweet. Yeah.
You?
Well, I had a great almost team wipe. So playing on Verdansk, If you remember the soccer fields, there's a firehouse kind of catty corner to the soccer fields. So
Mm-hmm.
I was in the tower of that. My teammate regained on me, and I observed a team coming from the. I observed a team that was coming from the gas towards me, so I engaged them at range, and then somebody had a sniper rifle, robbed me of my plates, so I dropped down the little hole. And then my teammate, I don't know if he got knocked and fell down the hole or if he fell down the hole and never couldn't pull a shoot in time, but he hits the ground and he's downed. I hit the ground, pick him up, and then start putting plates in. And I can hear as I'm rezzing him, or I put my plates in and then I pick him up, and I can hear this other team coming. Right, they're coming. They know we're there. They know they have I think they suspect they have at least one down. So I get him up just as the door pops open. And I don't know if they just only saw him and they didn't see me, but the first guy through the door, I just basically put the HMR 9 to the side of his ear hole and put him down. And then immediately put a grenade on him and back off down the hallway to, there's that reception desk at the front. And the other two kind of file in. And I am literally bunny hopping. Like, bunny hopping is back in that mode, in case you're wondering. You can bunny hop all day. It's
Must be nice.
Horrific. And I'm just bunny hopping back and forth in and out of cover and like behind the deck. And like, I'm just like, look like a damn jackrabbit. Down the other two, we're playing trios. So I have all three down. At least one of them has a self-res, so I don't get the team wipe right off the bat. And then I get shot in the back by somebody else. So, and I don't know what happened to my teammate. He probably got obliterated the first moment they came through the door. But it was quite entertaining to knock all three. And I will tell you this, having aim assist that doesn't lock onto you when you move, it's great. It's outstanding. And I never thought I'd say that. So I'm going to leave that where it is. But we are again over time because apparently we have big mouths and we can't shut up. So I appreciate everyone who's stuck around this far. Jay, I know, does as well.
I do.
Together we are the Slightly Above Average Gaming Podcast. This has been episode 29. Thank you all for rolling through and sticking with us, and we're going to catch you on the next one. This has been Sub 1 Kitty, along with J007 TV and the Slightly Above Average Gaming Podcast. We're logging off now, so we'll see you next time.